down the street, it's a beautiful day. Come on, let's visit Mrs. Kane and Miss Jane. They always have something fun to say on Porch Story today.
Why, hello there,
everyone. Welcome back.
I know we're back at it for another Porch Story, and we're still in our season 2, and the weather, Miss Kane,
Could be perfect, more perfect.
It is just perfect. We're in a perfect spring day here on the front porch, and we just want to welcome all of you for joining us again, right?
Yes, we do.
You know, for another adventure with both literature and art, all on one lovely front porch. Now, Miss Kane, do you want to start us out like we do?
Yes, to this time, we have the singing bowl.
Yes.
So, we're going to do a 3-breath?
I think 3 breaths would be nice.
A 3-breath breathing exercise so we can calm ourselves down, get our brains working.
Oh, that's going to be helpful.
And help us focus on this fabulous story that we're going to be sharing with you today.
Oh, I love it.
So here we go.
Oh, that's just perfect.
Perfect.
It was.
Perfect.
It was just
perfect. You know
I think the show's done. We're so perfect.
Oh.
You want me to take that for you? Or are you
know
okay?
what?
Look at that. You've got a little niche
I found
there.
a little spot for
Oh,
here.
I set this table up so good today.
You did a good job.
Oh, say, what do you have for us today, Miss Kane?
Today we are going to read Pocket Full of Colors, The Magical World of Mary Blair, Disney Artist Extraordinaire.
Oh my goodness! And look what I happen to have. A second book, Mary Blair's Unique Flair. We've got 2 books today for her double feature.
But we're only going to read this one.
That's right. And we're going to use some images from this one to kind of highlight, because Miss Kane and I kind of fell in love with how this illustrator used paper collage. This illustrator did a beautiful job in creating the images for this, but we liked how this was sort of a different approach to illustrating. So we'll intercut these images in later on through the magic of film editing.
So the author is Amy Guglielmo and Jacqueline Torville, and it was illustrated by Bridget Behringer.
What's really neat too is one of the women who wrote the book is on Instagram, and you can reach out to her, find out where she's having book signings. And I actually had sent her a message and said we were doing this, and she was like, yay! So it was really fun.
So we're going to start off, Pocket Full of Colors.
Pocket Full of
The
Colors.
Magical World of Mary Blair, Disney Artist Extraordinaire. So this is the title page that shows all that very good information.
Yep, and she's keeping the book jacket on. That's going to keep the book in case it gets any dust or dirt.
Yes. Under a wide blue sky on a red dirt road, in a lemon yellow house, there lived a little girl named Mary. Other children collected marbles or dolls, but Mary collected colors of every shade and every hue.
Ah, I love that. And you're going to notice a lot of different words to describe colors, and a lot of different types of colors. Like you might think, oh, I know red, yellow, blue, but she already said lemon in there, right?
One day, Mary's parents announced they were moving out west.
Oh, boy.
As she waved goodbye to the yellow house, Mary tucked her friend Lemon in her pocket. Mary would miss the happy home, but she had new colors to collect.
And I love that. So she referred to her house as her little friend Lemon and tucked that in, and off she went.
So she kept that color.
Exactly.
That's how she collected colors.
And she was born in 1911, so we're talking like the olden days, where she had to then go across country. So that would not have been an easy ride.
Not at all.
That would not have been an easy journey.
Driving across the sun-bleached desert, Mary spied russet, taupe, and sienna.
Oh, wow.
So those are the colors.
Those are like the browns and the
browns.
rust colors. Beautiful on that.
When she arrived in California, she glimpsed the azure ocean and found groves of golden fruit dripping from Floridian trees.
Look at that.
The blue and the greens.
And they've got one of those old-timey cars, too. So, Miss Kane, that could not have been an easy drive.
Probably a very bumpy ride.
Oh, yeah, because that would have been like, she was born in 1911 and they were traveling. So she was probably like, 1920s they're traveling.
In the city, she discovered steel gray buildings and mauve-tinted skies.
Wow.
Mary opened her sketchbook. She mixed her paints. She would save these shades for just the right time.
And you know, Mary probably had a little paint kit like this. That's what I'm thinking. Because when I'm looking at this illustration, so this is a little metal tin paint kit. And she probably had dry watercolor paints like this. And then to activate these paints, all you had to do is have a little cup of water, mix them in, and start the magic right there with that.
When she was older, Mary went to art school. She met Lee. He showed her rosy pink and blushing red. She kept those colors in her heart.
I think those are their colors that they fell in love.
Well, yeah,
I think so.
Valentine's Day
Valentine's right there.
has lots of pinks and reds. Together, Mary and Lee painted rainbows. But it was the Great Depression,
Oh boy.
and people were poor. No one was buying rainbows except one place.
And before we go to this place, we should talk about the Great Depression was a time that really was started by a financial stock market crash, but then it led to mass unemployment. It led to a dust bowl in the Midwest. And so people suddenly didn't have jobs. They didn't have what we call today like disposable income or those little extra things. And so people were it was desperate times.
Very, very poor.
And a lot of things felt black and white.
Yes.
You know, it really felt like that.
So, except for one place,
Ooh, where is that going to be?
Mary landed a job at Walt Disney Studios, one of the first women ever to be hired. Finally, a place for her colors to run and dance and play as they pleased.
Oh my goodness. And so Walt Disney, you know, he's creating Disney World and Disneyland and all of this. These are his creations that are coming to fruition. And he's also having animated films. I mean, Snow White was the first animated feature film.
But on her first day of work, the men in charge didn't want to talk about Cerulean or Celadon or Cerise. They were only interested in black and white.
Uh-oh.
Mary was told to follow the rules.
Oh my goodness. So think about it. If you're all about the rainbow of colors and you suddenly go to a world that's black and white, and I'm not saying you can't make great black and white art. You can. Classic films were made in black and white, sketching in black and white, pen and ink drawings. But her world is about color, right?
Yes, look at what she's wearing. She's wearing like a teal dress, and they're wearing black and white and browns.
I know. Oh boy. I think the illustrator's kind of using that to say maybe how open their minds are too. Is that what you're thinking, Miss Kane?
Kind of.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like about that.
She tried, but her colors were too vivid, too wild. When Mary turned in her work, all her ideas were rejected.
Oh my gosh. Now, boys and girls, I want you to think about what if everything you turned in, people said, no, thank you. We don't like that. I mean, that would be really disheartening, wouldn't it?
Yes.
It'd be hard not to get frustrated.
Twinkling emerald skies.
Oh.
The men turned them blue.
Uh-oh.
Magenta horses that could fly. The men made them brown and put them in a stable.
What?
Peach giraffes with tangerine spots. Her bosses just shook their heads.
Oh my
They
gosh.
didn't know what to make of her art.
Oh my gosh. So she's got kind of like, when you grow up, you might go to a business meeting, you might have like a little picture board where you have to show displays of the artwork or things that you're interested in, concepts and ideas. And they're kind of like, no, thank you. Oh, how disheartening.
But Walt, the man who owned the company, did. He loved her color so much, he asked Mary to join him on a trip to South America to meet some new ones.
So let's talk about where South America is too.
There you go.
So Mary was living over here in California. And so they flew all along the edge of South America down here. So it's a pretty long flight. And we're talking about probably the 40s and 50s that they're doing this. And so they went down to Brazil and they did Argentina. So all around in here.
Mary delighted in the colors of Brazil, Argentina, and Peru. She worked hard to capture the vibrant scenery. When it was time to go home, Mary's bags burst with fuchsia, teal, aquamarine, indigo, lime green, and banana yellow.
Oh my gosh.
Look at colors just pop off this page.
I love this page. It's one of my favorite pages. I'm going to take just a minute to talk about color here, if you're all right with
go
that.
right ahead.
So a lot of times when you hear about art, you'll talk about like the primary colors, and those are going to be your red, yellow, blue. There are so many other colors in the world, and there's so many varieties of red, and there's so many varieties of blue and yellow. And what really changed art, and I'm talking about painting, printmaking, that type of art, is when there was suddenly a consistency in colors, where artists by 1841, they could go to an art supply store and buy a consistent color of blue. They were not having to grind their paint colors and create their own. Now they could still buy these consistent paint colors and mix them from there, but I didn't have to worry that I would buy a powdered paint and it had some other chemicals or elements in it that would actually rot out my canvas. There were reports of people doing paintings in which, oh my gosh, all the faces within a couple years dissolved because it had organic materials in it that didn't adhere to the canvas. Also, if Miss Kane came to me in the 1830s and wanted a portrait made, I would be like, well, these are my standard colors for a portrait. Now, if you want this beautiful blue, and if you want that beautiful red, those are very expensive colors, so therefore you have to add extra money or fees to pay to make that work. But once 1841, they had metal tubes of paint, so you could go and buy them. But before that, you might get a little tincture of paint like this, or like what we were talking about, grinding, having to use a mortar and pestle, grind up your paints, put some kind of medium. I mean, one of the saddest stories about experimenting with paint is going back to Leonardo da Vinci and The Last Supper. And he paints that on a wall, and then it just starts to erode because he was trying out a new technique. So I love that Da Vinci was trying something new, but it has been a challenge for hundreds of years to keep it restored because, you know, it's a classic painting. It's world famous, and you can actually see parts of it just flake off the wall. I know. It's a science too, Miss Kane. It is a science.
It's sad after all that
I
hard
know that work.
Yes,
I know.
all that hard work.
Poor Da Vinci.
After Mary returned to Disney, her concept art for the studio's upcoming films grew even more adventurous as she drew upon the eye-popping shades she'd observed in South America. Cinderella needed a teal pumpkin coach. The caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland could only be aquamarine, and the mermaids in Peter Pan simply had to be lime green.
Lime green. So, and you heard all those names. Those are probably films that a lot of you, or your parents, or your grandparents have watched because they're classic Disney films. And I think we found out later that some of those elements did show up in the films, right?
Yes.
I mean,
They
most
used
of them,
some of it, but not all of it.
yeah, most of them were rejected.
This time, some of Mary's
There we
ideas
go.
were accepted, but most of her art was still considered too modern, too abstract, and just not right.
Oh my gosh.
Mary's colors encouraged her to leave the men with their black lines and strict rules. So she left. So she did. So she took her colors with her.
I know. And we'll do a close-up of this picture because it's one of my favorite ones. And Miss Kane, at first I said she was a peacock, but what did you say, Miss Kane?
I said it looked like she got wings. Colorful
Freedom.
wings.
I
'Cause
love
she's
that.
Free from the black and white and browns.
And it'd be different if that was her language, because some artists that is their language, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't true to her. And that's what we want you guys to be. True to who you are. You might be a person who works in pen and ink. My husband loves black and white photography, and it is outstanding. I, on the other hand, I know it's shocking, really like color. Okay? So, but they can live together. Right?
Yes. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
There we go.
Mary quickly found new work designing advertisements, illustrating picture books for children,
Yes.
and creating sets for plays and television commercials. She enjoyed the freedom of these new jobs. But Mary missed Walt. Then one day, out of the blue,
And so she did illustrations for little golden books, for different card designs. In fact, my skirt today is fabric that had been taken from greeting cards that she had done. And it was bought by a fabric company, and they used it on clothing. But she did like the I Wish I Could Fly book, and a little engine book, and a whole bunch of... You'll really, once you start looking at her style, it becomes a signature style, and you'll be like, oh, that's a Mary Blair.
and well, because I hadn't heard of her before, and now that you know her name,
Right.
you can equate her name to some of the colors and styles that she
Exactly.
brings out.
Yeah, and the images, like, you're like, oh, I get that now. So
So,
she got a call.
Then one day, out of the blue, boom, her
Hello?
phone rang. It was Walt. Mary, I have a project for you. I need your wild and beautiful colors, his voice boomed. Walt explained his idea to build a magical ride that would teach people about cultures from around the world.
Uh-oh.
The ride had to be full of color, which meant there was only one person for the job. Mary, you know about colors I've never even heard of before.
There we go.
Mary smiled, and then she frowned as she remembered the rules and the lines and the men in charge who didn't understand her colors or her style of art. There was only one way to answer.
What was her answer? We'll find out.
Yes, we will. Yes, said Mary, but her yes came with a condition.
Ooh, a condition.
This time, Mary wanted to be the one in charge. Walt welcomed her aboard.
There we go. She was going to be the boss, Applesauce. She wasn't going to have to answer to any of them, right?
No. Mary's paint seemed to sparkle when she hung up the phone. She had never been to places like China or Morocco or Kathmandu, but her colors had.
See, and that's a way to travel as well. I mean, art allows you to do that. You can look up about artists, you can study those things, and then you feel like, Miss Kate, that we're just taking a trip around the world right here, right?
A virtual trip.
A virtual trip. And right now, it's still in COVID, it's nice to have those options.
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
Sitting down to work, she squeezed out dabs of paint.
Here we
Lemon
go.
yellow, aquamarine, and azure. Mauve, taupe, and tangerine. Russet, sienna, and
Oh,
steel gray.
yes.
Celadon, cerulean, cerise, magenta, teal, indigo, and emerald shine from her palette. And when she picked up her brush, the colors Mary had so carefully collected all her life
All of
took her on a trip around the globe.
Oh my gosh.
So the colors went and captured different places from around the world.
I know, and she did kind of color themes. You
Mhm.
know, so you'll see like a group of certain colors together, and you go to the next area, another group of colors. So what'd she end up making, Miss Kate?
When the work was done and the ride opened, people gasped in awe. It's a Small World was a sensation.
It's a small world after all. And it is one of my favorite rides. I know that some people think, okay, that song and everything, but go ahead and finish that out, Miss Kane.
When it was Mary's turn to take the ride, she leaned back in the boat
Oh,
and let her colors wash over her. It was a world of laughter, a world of smiles, and color, color, color everywhere. This, at last, was Mary's world.
and that really is her iconic imagery, where she's designed kind of everyone looks different, but everyone looks unified. And I think it's because one artist created that whole world, and so it gives it a unification. And her
Kind
style
of a one vision, right?
Exactly. And so I had a couple other books out here, Miss Kane. I know you have a couple of things to show at the end of that. But Sonia Delaney is an artist, and I really wanted to include her because she was about color. She did fabric theater, and she just was not afraid or intimidated. And so I like to think that maybe Mary saw some of Sonia's work, because Sonia's a little bit older than Mary Blair and coming up, and definitely our friend Matisse. And these background pieces are kind of student versions of some Matisse work. Fearless artist with cut paper. And I really can see the crossover of Mary Blair's, the way she designed the buildings and cities, and It's a Small World. Definitely some inspiration from Henri Matisse. You know, that's what artists do. We look to what other artists have created for inspiration. Just like a good chef, you know, they'll be like, oh, I love this stew. I'm going to add my own twist to it, right?
Yes.
Do you have some other author notes? Love that.
There's a whole bunch of author notes, but we're going to end with when Mary Blair died in 1978. It seemed like her art would end up as a footnote in the history of Walt Disney Studios.
I can see that.
This began to change as emerging animators rediscovered Disney's golden age.
Yes.
And with it, Mary Blair. In 2008, Mary Blair was named a Disney legend.
Oh.
And 2 years later, a Google Doodle was published honoring what would have been Mary's 100th birthday.
I love that.
In 2014, the Walt Disney Family Museum, which is in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, and it's a gorgeous museum,
Yes,
right
it
by
is.
the,
Yes.
and it's easy to park there
Yes.
too. And so for San Francisco, that's a plus.
hosted the first retrospective of her work, as room after colorful room
Oh.
burst with Mary's joyful, exuberant art. It became clear what Mary had created during her lifetime. Pure magic.
And you know, we'll have to look and see if there is like a YouTube clip of that museum show, because that would be a wonderful thing to add on with this. But we wanted to include Mary Blair because she's not only a fine artist, she went to school to be a fine artist, and there was like a wonderful little quote here. So this is Women in Art, 50 Fearless Creatives Who Inspire the World. And Rachel Ignakovsky is just this amazing illustrator writer whose work I have just kind of a little bit of a groupie of her work as well. And what she did in this book, she does a book about scientists, about famous women. she kind of gives you a beautiful image here, and then she also gives text over here and kind of summarizes things. But one of the quotes she uses from Mary Blair is, "You get an education in school and in college, and then you start to work, and that's when you learn." And I really think so, because, you know, I love school, I love college, but I really think as a person who's been teaching kids, and I know you feel the same way, I've learned more not in school, but working my job.
Well, life is much more interesting if you're constantly learning.
Totally agree.
If you stop learning,
I know what?
Yeah, there's
I
so
know.
much more to find out about.
I agree, because it is truly a small world.
Yes, it is.
It is. Well, we hope that you guys have enjoyed our little presentation today. A lot of things to explore about colors. So, you know, this book has been really interesting to me, and Miss Kane, I'm just getting into it, The Secret Lives of Color. And this will also be listed on our little reference page. But it takes you through how each color was discovered
So
and
the
added.
side
Yeah.
page has the color
Look at
that you're talking about.
It is. So it's almost like going through a color wheel, you know. And I know a lot of people will talk about, like, you have prism, where you can separate out the white light and see the rainbow of colors. But colors that we paint with work differently, because if you keep adding all the colors together, you kind of end up muddy.
Yes.
So it's very different. So you have to think about the structure of colors. But I suggest, you know, finding out about colors, the most expensive ones. But I'm going to leave that for you guys to explore. Don't you agree, Miss Kane?
Great idea.
All right. So stay safe. We think about you guys.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Wear your mask, wash your hands, eat your vegetables, and stay arty. And read some books, don't you think?
Definitely read some books.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 a week is good.
I would love that.
I know, wouldn't it be good? All right,
All
goodbye.
right, bye.
Bye, guys.
Be kind.
Oh, kindness, yes.
Spread that
Yes,
kindness.
kindness.